We've started putting the second layer on the shear clamp. It's going around very well. I like it. It sounds really solid. That's lovely. I've got 2 pieces on each side at the moment, so we're working both sides back evenly. As I said last week, in last week's video, not enough clamps. I've got every clamp that I possess is in use. So that's as far as we go with one go. The first pieces are actually nearly dry now, but I think I'll probably wait for tomorrow to put the next bit on. I'll put one more on either side tomorrow evening when I get back from work. I've prepared the pieces for the next 2. I'll probably go and prepare 2 more pieces now. But yeah, that's it. It's going around really well. So we get round the shear clamp first of all, do the try and log after that. They're coming very nicely at the front here, happy with that. Scarf joints come out really well. This time I cut the scarf joints by hand with a handsaw. Obviously it's a bit more effort, takes longer, but they come out more accurately. I'm pleased with them. They've come out very well. So that's where we are. We should carry on putting these round and hopefully start shaping up. Hopefully at the weekend, we'll see. Aye, well, it's another week. Several things to say this week. Exciting times, start off with that. Yesterday evening we broke through the 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so that was nice. Thank you to everybody who subscribed, it's marvellous. And also, you know, people who are sending or writing very, very nice comments on these videos, it's marvellous. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. And it's good that people are interested in what's going on here, I guess. I've made a change to the way I approach Patreon as well. Up until now, because I set it up ages ago when I wasn't producing much content, and I set it up so that patrons on Patreon would, if anybody cared to support me on Patreon, it would be per post. And as I say, that was a long time ago when I wasn't posting very much, but then it sort of dawned on me that it's silly and it's asking too much. So now I've just changed it. I've set it up so it's now monthly. So if anybody feels like being a patron on Patreon, a monthly a monthly donation is now possible. And I've also set it up so the minimum is $1 a month, which, isn't very much. So, if I hate asking for stuff, but if anybody appreciates the content that I'm turning out, feels like supporting on Patreon, the link's at the start of this video, isn't it? In the entrance, in the opening sequence there. Minimum of $1 a month is possible. From $2 a month, you get access to. I shall start doing a bit of patron-only content, some short videos. Where I'll go into a bit more detail about thoughts and experiences and the build and stuff like that. So I shall stick every now and again, maybe a couple a month, I'll stick a bit of Patreon-only short video up. So anybody who supports me on Patreon can get access to a bit of extra content. That's that. Anyhow, that is great. We're in here again. I've made quite a bit of progress, I think. I think the last video was shot Easter Sunday, wasn't it? So we've had Easter Monday. I've been out here several evenings this week. Now it's the weekend again, so we're getting on. What's happened is that the second laminate layer is now on the shear clamp and on the chine log all the way round. I've also managed to sand up the shear clamp, the top level. So I went around that with the little block plane that I showed you a few weeks ago. Went around also in places with the angle grinder with the flappy sanding disc on it, and then finished it off with the orbital sander, and that's come up really nicely. I think it's looking good. I've just put a little bit of epoxy here and there on it to fill bits where the scarf joints were or whatever. But that's almost finished. I've got just got the forward section on the other side there that's not done, but other than that, I'm around 1.5. Well, one side and half of the other side is done, put it that way. Okay, I've got to do, obviously, it's a fairly dusty job when I'm grinding or sanding, and I've got to do the underside as it is now, which will be the top side, obviously, of the chine log. Clean that up, and that will be a particularly dusty job working over my head there, but just got to keep going and, you know, do it. It's all come out very well though. I'm pleased. It's looking good. What else have we done? Okay, floor beams we did last week, didn't we? So the next stage is I've got to go around and start shaping this up. I've got to check that the shear clamp and the chine log are running in one line, which if I put that straight edge on there, you'll see they're close, but not quite. We've got maybe, was it 2 millimeters maybe there, same there. So I've got to come around there with a plane and take a little bit off of there and a little bit off of there. I'll do that with the electric planer so that it all sits flush. If you get around there, that one's pretty close. Perhaps needs a touch with a plane. There we're, you know, all, it's close. It's not much, but it needs a, I've got to run around there with that straight edge and plane that up as need be. So we've got to go all the way around there doing that, taking whatever, a little touch off of there, a little touch off there. These have then got to be planed up to sit flush. So I run the planer up here so that they're flush and at that correct angle. So that's got to be done. In 1 or 2 places, let's find one. Okay, come back. No, that's not a good example. No, can't see one there. Ah, this one. Yeah, here's one. 1 or 2 places. You remember, I said in a video a long way. Excuse me. I said in a video a long way back that I'd made a little error in the lofting calculation that I worked out later on, and you see that there. Here it's fine, but here it's a bit shy. So I've got to glue a piece of wood up there to bring it out there, so that I can then plane it to shape. So there's 1 or 2 places I've got to glue a little bit up before I shape, but it's not difficult. It's easy enough to cut a bit of wood and glue it up there. I'll glue it before I plane it, so I'm gluing to the flat surface. I glue it so it's sticking out proud and then plane it to shape. So that should be straightforward enough. 1 or 2 places needs a little bit of filler around there so everything's nice and tight. There's no gaps, no room for any movement or any moisture to get in. That will be coming up this week. And so what's going to happen next is this shaping up. Obviously the line of the bottom's got to be shaped as well, so I'll attack them side at a time. So I'll do one side, get that all flush and running true. The other side, same thing, running true and fair. Then I'll do the bottom. So one side at a time, because it's all, you know, it's 3 flat planes really, isn't it? One at a time, get it running fair and nice. And then, when that's ready, it will be time to start the planking. As I said last week, I'll have to order a big load. I think I'll be ordering 60 sheets of 10mm ply. I'm not in any rush. As long as I start planking by May, I'll be happy with progress. So I've got plenty of time to get this fair and shaped up. You know, as I say, no rush there. I'll try to get it nice. Yeah, one thing I've picked up or just ordered are these bronze screws. It's a 6. Can you see that? Yeah. 6 by 100 bronze screw. I bought these from Toplicht in Germany. They're in Hamburg actually, which isn't so very far from here, but I bought them mail order. And what we're going to do is we're going to just back up a bit, Hazel, will you? I'm going to stick them 3 through there, through the stem into the knee, just to support that. I put 2 more through the stern post into the knee, and I've also bought this bronze length of 10mm 3/8 bronze rod, the nuts and washers for it. So we'll put a couple of those through the knee, because the knee if you remember, is glued up out of 3.5 inch, 9 centimetre pieces, so it's pretty heavy laminate, and if you're laminating with big pieces, there's a danger of them moving, you know, with the normal contraction expansion that wood does, and then they could break the bonds or break the wood or whatever. So we'll stick a couple of bronze bolts through the knee there, both ends, to give that a bit of extra support, and that looks nice. Here's the nut. So they sell them. They sell them. You know, you can buy them individually or by bulk. The prices go down if you buy in bulk. Looks good. Stick that on there. So that'll be once, but I'll do that once I've finished the shaping up, so I know that I haven't got to plane any more off of the knee. The screws can go through the stem now, that's not a problem, but the bolts through the knee, make sure I've shaped it up first, and then I'll set them in so that the top of the bolt obviously doesn't protrude beyond the top of the knee there, or the bottom when it's the right way up. Yeah, and that's where we are now. This big shaping up session. So planing, sanding, getting a true and fair. I think we'll probably cut here. As you probably noticed, the weather's much better. Spring has started properly. It's lovely. I can even see the grass starting to grow. Yeah, birds are singing, everyone's happy, crocuses are out. And I think winter is done, so we made it through the cold weather. That's marvellous. Pleased with that. Yeah, we'll cut here. We'll go next door, do a tool tip. Time for Tony's tool tip. And this week I thought I'd talk about saws very briefly, because last week when I was showing that sequence of cutting the floor beams, a few people commented afterwards about me cutting that by hand, which was nice. And I do, in fact, I cut quite a lot by hand. I find that cutting by hand is often more accurate, and certainly when I did Miss Molly, I cut a lot of that by hand, a lot of the wood I saw by hand. Over the years, you know, I've spent a lot of time sawing wood by hand. Anyhow, there's also a bit of a sort of a philosophy underlying this, and I'll start off. Another thing I do, as you probably know, is I do a bit of self-recording music, mixing, mastering it myself, and I follow a fella who gives tips on this sort of stuff, and he's now just started giving business tips. Graham Cochran, you may or may not know of him, but he has always given this advice to not agonise about the equipment you've got. If you use good techniques, use skill, and are careful, you can get great results with fairly ordinary equipment. And in his latest business advice video, he quoted Voltaire and what was it? Better is the enemy of good. That was the quote, wasn't it? The idea being that if you keep agonising, trying to get better and better and better, and never actually produce anything, never release, never finish anything, you don't achieve anything. So you're better off just putting out good. Kind of relevant to the equipment, and that better idea relevant to saws. I've laid out my collection of saws on the table saw here, hand saws. This is what I've got. Not all of them I use on the boat build. I'll start off with this one. The best saw I've got is this dovetail saw. It's fairly old, Sheffield steel, from when they actually made good steel in Sheffield. Beautiful little saw, but it's a dovetail saw. I haven't used it on the boat yet. When I started this build, I needed a new tenon saw. I've never had a good tenon saw. I had a crappy old one, but anyhow. And I bought this budget tenon saw from the Home Depot, do-it-yourself centre, Belmarked, whatever you want to call it. It's cheap. It's one of these with the hardened tips. You see, look, 2 or 3 millimetres are hardened there. Designed not to be resharpened. Lovely and sharp. Cuts beautifully. I've cut a lot on this boat build with it. It's still sharp. But cheap and horrible. Well, horrible. In my opinion, whoever designed it didn't know much about ergonomics, because the handle is fairly uncomfortable to hold. I tend to hold it with that horn in the palm of my hand, like that sort of thing. But also a bit too flexible for my liking. But, you know, it cuts well, and I've cut a lot with this. I've just cut all the scarf joints on the shear clamp and chine log with this by hand, and it cut beautifully. So it's a fine saw, even though it's not the best quality. If you use it with you know, control and with skill, you can get great results with a cheap saw. This is the saw I bought in Canada. That I did a lot of Miss Molly my last boat, Miss Molly, when I rebuilt her. You can see the rebuild on my website if you're interested. Miss Molly Adventures. The first part is the rebuild. I cut most of the wood for the Miss Molly build with this very small panel saw with tiny little fine teeth as well. You see those tiny fine teeth, which are now getting a bit old and worn out. But it still cuts. It's not the best. It's coming towards the end of its life now. But really, that is not a very good saw. But I cut loads of wood with it. Loads of wood with it. And accurately, it was fine. It's just a case of applying yourself, isn't it? The saw that I used for the floor beams the other day is this one here. It's a Sandvik, or whatever they call themselves nowadays. Barco, is it they call themselves? Panel saw, also I think a disposable one, although I can't see that blue line along the teeth on this. Maybe it was sharpened. It was a great saw. It's getting a little bit less sharp now. Maybe I should run a file over it, but it still cuts okay. And that's the point. You know, if I use a saw and if I feel it's still cutting fine, it's cutting accurately and it's cutting fast enough, then it's good. You know, there's no need for throwing it away and buying a new one or whatever. Certainly in the case of these disposable ones, that's pretty much all you can do. So if you feel it's cutting fine, it's good. What I do with those disposable ones when they get to the end of their life, which is what this one here has, is that they go down into my plasterboard, drywall, sheetrock cutting section. So I cut plasterboard and thermalite blocks with this. It still cuts them, and once it's died for that purpose, then that's the end of its life, really, isn't it? I suppose it's scrapyard after that. That's my saw collection. I didn't mention the Stanley Jet Cut, which is coming towards the end of its wood cutting life. Actually, it's not as sharp as it should be, and this is a disposable. In a way, I'd love to have a Spear and Jackson tenon saw, you know, and they're not that expensive. You can get a nice Spear and Jackson tenon saw for €35 or so. But you know, I've still got this one, and it cuts nicely. It works fine. So why? And this, you know, going back to Graham Cochrane's idea, you don't need the best equipment. As long as your equipment's okay and you use it with care and with skill, you know, muscle control, the accuracy of a hand cut is all down, pretty much all down to the control of the muscles of the person who's using the saw. So if you use it with care, your eyes open, good control, ordinary tools will do the job. And that's sort of the message underlying everything that I've said in these tooltips so far. And there I think we'll cut.
Riches in the sunset, standing at the sea. Tell me where you're going. past your destination. Tell me where you're bound. We can move together where adventures abound. Running free before the